The vastness of space held secrets, mysteries, and wonders beyond human imagination. But for Commander Zorax, a high-ranking officer of the Jitharan Empire, Earth was nothing more than a curiosity, an insignificant planet in a corner of the galaxy. The Jitharan Empire had conquered countless worlds, but Earth had always been a distant, unimportant speck. That is, until Zorax was ordered to investigate. Zorax's ship, the Havoc, drifted silently through the dark void of space. Its sleek black hull shimmered with the cold light of distant stars. He stood on the bridge, his cold blue eyes staring out at the swirling cosmos beyond. He was tall, with sharp features, and a stern demeanor that made him appear even more intimidating. His species was known for their military prowess, having conquered planet after planet in the galaxy. They believed in strength above all else, and Zorax had always trusted in his tactical mind and the power of his fleet. When he had been assigned to Earth, it was only to gather information. The humans were primitive compared to the Jitharan, yet their planet was growing in influence, especially in the area of space travel. Zorax had been told that the humans might possess some hidden strength, something worth investigating. But he doubted it. He had seen hundreds of civilizations rise and fall in his lifetime, and Earth seemed no different, just another small, insignificant world. As the Havoc neared Earth's orbit, Zorax commanded the ship to slow down. He could see the small blue planet now, rotating gracefully in the vastness of space. From his vantage point, it seemed peaceful, almost serene. A peaceful world, for now, Zorax thought. But how long would it stay that way? The planet below was nothing special. It was covered in oceans and landmasses, much like many other planets Zorax had seen. It was small, with a population of billions, but its technological progress was far behind that of the Jitharan. Still, there was something about Earth that made the Admiral curious. He had been told that Earth was under the protection of a powerful fleet, but Zorax had dismissed this as mere rumor. No human could pose a threat to the Jitharan Empire, and he was eager to see this fleet for himself. Zorax descended into Earth's atmosphere with ease. His ship was cloaked, undetectable to even the most advanced human sensors. The humans had no idea he was here, and that was how he liked it. He needed to assess the situation before revealing his presence. He needed to know if Earth was worth the Jitharan's attention, or if it would be just another conquest. Landing in a remote location outside of a small human city, Zorax disembarked from his ship. The air smelled different here, thick with humidity and the scent of the planet's plant life. The ground beneath his boots was soft, and the green of the trees and grass stood in stark contrast to the cold, sterile environments of Jitharan ships and cities. He was alone, except for his two trusted guards. Zorax had always preferred solitude when assessing new worlds. It allowed him to think clearly, without distractions. As he moved through the dense forest, he began to observe the humans from a distance. They were simple creatures, dressed in their peculiar clothes, walking around in their busy cities. They appeared unaware of the alien presence nearby, but Zorax wasn't here to study them directly. He was here to understand their potential, to find out if they were truly as weak as they seemed. Days passed, and Zorax watched the humans go about their daily lives. He watched them build, communicate, and create, but still, he saw nothing extraordinary. Their technology was primitive compared to the Jitharan, and their governments appeared disorganized and weak. Still, there was something about the way the humans interacted with their world. They adapted quickly to challenges, working together in ways that Zorax found puzzling. He had never seen such unity in any other species, not even among the Jitharan. One evening, while observing from a hidden position, Zorax witnessed a strange event. He saw a young human child, no older than 12, sitting in front of a glowing machine. The machine was small, almost toy-like, and the child appeared to be controlling it with ease. Zorax's sharp eyes followed the movements on the screen. It was a Starship simulator, but unlike any simulator the Jitharan used. It looked primitive, but the child's movements were precise, calculating. The child was commanding a fleet, making quick decisions, and navigating simulated space battles with a level of skill that Zorax found disturbing. Impossible, Zorax whispered to himself. He was accustomed to seeing military simulations, but this was something different. This child, with no formal training, was maneuvering with the precision of an experienced commander. Zorax's mind raced. Could it be that the humans possessed something he had underestimated? For the first time since his arrival, Zorax felt a stir of doubt. He had assumed that Earth was just another world to be ignored, but now he wasn't so sure. The child's play wasn't just play, it was strategy. And for some reason, Zorax couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much larger. The child's performance on the simulator would stay with Zorax long after he returned to his ship. He had never seen a species so seemingly insignificant hold such potential, especially in a child. The question now wasn't whether Earth was worth conquering. It was whether Earth could become a force that might one day challenge the Jithiran Empire. As the sun set over the Earth horizon, Zorax turned to his ship. His mission was far from over. Zorax couldn't shake the image of the young human child from his mind. The child had been so focused, so engaged in the Starship simulator. His fingers danced over the controls with a skill that, to Zorax, seemed beyond his years. It was almost as if the child was born with an innate understanding of battle tactics, a grasp of strategy that some experienced commanders could only dream of. But how could this be? The humans were supposed to be a primitive species, unremarkable in every way. Yet this child's performance on the simulator was something Zorax couldn't explain. The Jithiran Empire had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than Earth's, planets with technology far superior to anything humanity had created. Yet Zorax had never encountered anything like this before. This wasn't just a child playing games. There was something deeper here, something that required further investigation. Determined to understand more, Zorax spent the next several days observing the child from a distance, carefully avoiding detection. The child lived in a small house near a quiet town, surrounded by others who appeared to be ordinary humans. Nothing about the family stood out at first glance, but Zorax had learned not to trust first impressions. He watched from the shadows, studying their routines, the interactions, the way they went about their daily lives. The more Zorax observed, the more questions arose. Why was this child so skilled? Was it something unique to this individual, or was it a broader characteristic of humanity? Could Earth, with its primitive technology, be capable of creating such extraordinary talent? As the days passed, Zorax learned that the child's name was Ethan. He was a quiet, reserved boy who preferred to spend his time inside playing the simulator rather than outside with other children. Zorax found it strange that someone so young could be so focused, so intense. It seemed as though Ethan's whole world revolved around these simulations, which, to an outsider, appeared to be nothing more than childish games. But Zorax wasn't an outsider. He had seen the horrors of war, the strategic genius of military commanders, and the cold calculations that led to victory. What Ethan was doing was not play, it was preparation. One evening, Zorax couldn't resist any longer. He decided to make his move. He had to speak to Ethan. He needed to know what was going on in this child's mind, to understand how such a young human could possess such potential. With the stealth of a predator, Zorax approached the house, keeping to the shadows. Inside, he could hear the soft hum of the simulator. Zorax pressed his ear to the wall and listened as Ethan's voice filled the room, muttering to himself as he guided his fleet through an intricate space battle. The child's words were soft, but full of intent. Zorax's sharp hearing caught every detail, every tactical choice. Enemy fleet approaching from the starboard side. Reposition our fighters to counter the assault. Shields at maximum. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Zorax's mind raced. This wasn't just a game. Ethan was making real-time decisions, as if commanding a fleet of warships. Each word spoken was a command, each thought a calculated risk. Zorax had seen military commanders debate over similar decisions, but Ethan, a mere child, was handling it all with the calmness of an experienced leader. Zorax stepped back, his mind whirling with questions. What was it about humanity that made this possible? How could such a small, seemingly insignificant species create someone with this much tactical skill? Zorax had seen human soldiers before, but none had displayed anything remotely close to this level of expertise. Could this child be the start of something much bigger, a new generation of humans who were capable of challenging the might of the Jitharan Empire? As Zorax continued his surveillance, he began to notice something else. Ethan's behavior wasn't unique. Other children, though not as skilled, seemed to share a similar pattern. Many of them, even at a young age, were drawn to simulations, to strategic thinking, to the thrill of command. Could it be that humanity, in its youth, was inherently strategic, capable of learning and adapting in ways that Zorax had never anticipated? For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zorax felt a flicker of doubt. He had come here with the mission to observe, to study, but now he found himself wondering whether Earth was merely a planet to be conquered, or if it held something much more dangerous. The humans were not just playing games. They were preparing for something. And Zorax was beginning to think that the galaxy might not be ready for what humanity was capable of. That night, as Zorax stood alone in the darkness, looking up at the stars, the weight of his discovery pressed heavily on his mind. This was no longer a simple reconnaissance mission. Earth was not the weak, primitive world he had believed it to be. The potential he had seen in one human child could be the key to an entire species' strength. Zorax couldn't shake the thought. Earth was playing a long game, and it was a game that could soon turn deadly. Zorax couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. The child's natural ability to command and strategize was unlike anything Zorax had encountered in all his years of battle. The more he observed, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a passing skill, a phase that children would grow out of. No, this was something more, something deeply rooted in humanity itself. The more Zorax considered the child's behavior, the more he realized that Earth was not the weak, primitive world he had assumed. The potential within humanity was astounding. The power of the human mind, the creativity, the ability to think strategically at such a young age. It was unlike anything he had seen from other species in the galaxy. But the question that kept swirling in his mind was, why? Why was Ethan so different? What made humans capable of this? Could all humans be like this, or was it just a few exceptional individuals? Zorax could no longer rely on the belief that humanity was insignificant. He needed to understand what was happening on Earth, and he needed to do it quickly. That was when he made the decision. It was time to confront the child, to speak to him directly. Zorax knew that by doing so, he would be breaking protocol. No alien admiral had ever interacted with a human child, let alone spoken to one outside of official communication channels. But this wasn't just any child. This was Ethan, and something about the boy called to him. Something about the way he commanded his fleet, his focus, his determination. It was almost as if Ethan were playing a real-life strategy game, a game that had no reset button. Zorax prepared himself for the meeting. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Ethan was a human child, after all, and humans were unpredictable. They didn't operate by the same rules as the other species Zorax had encountered. And yet, Zorax felt certain that Ethan's mind would offer him the answers he sought. The answers to why humans were so different, why their potential was so vast. As the sun began to set, Zorax moved closer to Ethan's home. He remained hidden in the shadows, just out of sight, as he watched the boy. Ethan was inside, sitting at a table, his eyes glued to a tablet screen. Zorax's keen eyes caught the flicker of the Starship simulator on the screen, and he knew instantly that the child was once again playing his game, orchestrating a simulated space battle with the same level of skill Zorax had witnessed before. The thought crossed his mind that perhaps Ethan wasn't aware of the gravity of his actions. Perhaps to the child, this was nothing more than a game, a way to pass the time. But Zorax couldn't ignore the fact that every choice Ethan made in the simulation felt real. The intensity with which he maneuvered his fleet, the precision of his commands, it was all too calculated, too intentional, to be mere child's play. Zorax stepped forward, his footfall silent, his movements fluid and quiet. He was close now, close enough to see the faint glow of the screen illuminating Ethan's face. The boy was so engrossed in the game that he didn't notice the alien Admiral approaching. Zorax's heart raced in anticipation. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. Without warning, Zorax's voice rang out from behind the child. "Ethan." The boy froze, his body tensing as he looked around the room in confusion. Zorax stepped into view, his towering alien form casting a long shadow across the room. Ethan's eyes widened in fear, but Zorax could see the hint of curiosity in them too. Despite the alien's intimidating presence, the boy didn't scream or run. He didn't panic. Instead, Ethan slowly stood up from his chair, eyes locked on Zorax with a mixture of caution and fascination. "What are you?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the situation. It was clear that the boy was frightened, but his curiosity seemed to outweigh it. "I am an admiral from another star system," Zorax replied, his voice calm but firm. "I've been watching you, Ethan. I've been watching your skills on the simulator." Ethan didn't say anything at first. He simply stood there, eyes searching Zorax's face for any sign of threat. "You're here because of the game." Zorax nodded. "Not just the game. What you've been doing is far more than just a game. What you are doing is preparing for something bigger. Your skills, your ability to command, it's unlike anything I've ever seen from a human. And that concerns me." Ethan tilted his head, as though trying to understand. "I don't know what you mean. It's just a game. I'm just playing." Zorax shook his head. "You are playing, yes, but this is no ordinary game. What you are doing is much more real than you realize. You are preparing for a battle, one that could change everything. I've seen civilizations fall because of this, and I am here to understand why humanity is so different." Ethan looked at the alien for a long moment, then looked down at the simulator on his tablet. For the first time, he seemed to understand the weight of what was happening. His small fingers hovered over the controls, and for a moment, he appeared to be lost in thought. "You think this is real?" Ethan asked, his voice quieter now. Zorax's eyes gleamed. "Yes, Ethan. I think it's more real than you know." The realization began to dawn on Zorax. This child, this human boy, might hold the key to understanding humanity's potential. And if the humans were capable of this level of skill, of this level of strategic thinking, what else were they capable of? What else could they do if pushed far enough? Could they defeat the Jithiran Empire? Zorax had no answers yet, but one thing was certain. Humanity was no longer something to be dismissed. It was something to be reckoned with. As days passed, Zorax found himself consumed by thoughts of Ethan and the boy's extraordinary skills. What had once seemed like a trivial human pastime, a game of simulated space battles, had turned into a source of deep concern. The Admiral could not escape the feeling that Earth was on the verge of something greater, something that could disrupt the balance of power across the galaxy. Zorax had always prided himself on being able to analyze situations with cold, logical precision. His experiences with countless alien races had taught him how to predict outcomes, to calculate the possibilities based on the data available. But humans had something unpredictable. They weren't like the other species he had encountered. Their capacity for innovation, their hunger for discovery, it was beyond anything Zorax had seen before. He couldn't help but think back to that day when he first observed Ethan. The boy had been controlling his fleet of simulated starships with the same precision Zorax would expect from a seasoned admiral. There had been no hesitation, no uncertainty. Ethan had made each decision with the confidence of someone who had already fought and won battles in the vastness of space. Zorax had spoken to him after that moment, but his curiosity remained. How was it possible for a child to be so adept at tactics, at strategy? Zorax had seen entire civilizations of highly trained officers who struggled to lead their forces in battle, and here was a human child who made it look effortless. The Geotheran Empire, a vast and powerful force that had been expanding its reach for centuries, would never have believed that a race like humanity could pose a threat. But Zorax now wondered if they were underestimating the human race, if their ingenuity and resourcefulness could be harnessed, if their potential could be unleashed. What would stop them from becoming a formidable force, one capable of challenging even the most powerful empires in the galaxy? Zorax had to admit it. He was no longer certain of his initial thoughts about Earth. What he had considered to be a primitive, unimportant world was now a place of incredible complexity and potential. He needed to understand more, to see if Ethan's ability to command fleets was a rare anomaly, or if it was something that could be found across the entire human race. To do that, Zorax knew he would have to engage with more humans. He needed to learn more about their strategies, their way of thinking. He needed to observe more, to see if there was a pattern to their actions, if humanity as a whole shared the same strengths as Ethan. The first step was to continue watching Ethan. But this time, Zorax wouldn't remain in the shadows. This time, he would make his presence known. The boy had already shown signs of curiosity about the alien admiral, and now Zorax needed to probe deeper into the mind of this young human. He needed to understand why Ethan was different, why his instincts were so sharp, and whether it was possible for all humans to possess this kind of genius. The next time Zorax visited, he would take a new approach. He would sit down with the child, not as an observer, but as a partner in this strange game. He would challenge Ethan, test him, and see just how deep this potential ran. Zorax had already gathered data on humanity's technological advancements, their military capabilities, their cultural history, but nothing had prepared him for what he was witnessing in this young boy. The boy who had no fear in the face of an unknown alien admiral, the boy who played his games like a seasoned commander. Zorax couldn't dismiss it anymore. This was something worth investigating, and if Earth truly had this kind of potential, then everything Zorax knew about the galaxy might need to be rewritten. As Zorax moved forward with his plans, he knew he had to be cautious. The Geotheran Empire would never accept the idea that humans could become a threat. It was one thing for Zorax to privately question Earth's strength, but it was another to openly acknowledge it to his superiors. He would have to tread carefully, and he knew that the truth about humanity had to be handled delicately. Zorax wasn't ready to reveal his findings just yet. The information he had gathered was too dangerous, too volatile. If others learned of it, it could alter the course of history. It could lead to war. He would need to continue observing, continue learning, and most importantly, continue to understand. Because if the humans truly did possess the potential to be more than just a primitive race, if they could challenge the might of the galaxy, then Zorax knew one thing for sure. He would have to be ready for what came next. And that meant one thing. He had to learn how to play the game. Zorax's curiosity about Ethan and the humans grew with each passing day. He could no longer view them as just another species in the galaxy. There was something about their tenacity, their drive to innovate, and the way they approached conflict that was different from anything Zorax had encountered before. The child, Ethan, had already demonstrated a level of tactical brilliance far beyond his years, and Zorax couldn't help but wonder if there were more like him. Was it just an anomaly, or was humanity capable of far greater feats? Determined to find out, Zorax devised a plan to test the limits of the boy's abilities. He wasn't going to simply observe anymore. It was time to engage, to challenge. One morning, Zorax visited Ethan's quarters again, but this time, he came not as a mere observer, but as a participant. He was fully prepared to interact, to see firsthand how Ethan would respond to a new kind of challenge. Zorax was no longer content to watch from a distance. He wanted to understand. "Ethan," Zorax called out, his voice still as unsettling as it had been the first time they met. The boy didn't flinch. Instead, he turned from the Starship simulator and faced the alien Admiral. His eyes were sharp, focused, as though he were already preparing for whatever came next. It was clear that Ethan didn't fear Zorax. It was as if the boy had already assessed the Admiral, understood that this alien wasn't a threat. "Are you ready to play a different kind of game?" Zorax asked, an unfamiliar sense of excitement building within him. Ethan didn't hesitate. "What kind of game?" he asked, leaning forward, intrigued. Zorax had prepared a simulation that was far more advanced than anything the boy had seen before. It wasn't just a game. It was a battle simulation that mirrored real-life warfare tactics, complete with advanced fleets, espionage, and unpredictable variables. The game wasn't about winning or losing. It was about decision-making under pressure, strategic planning, and adaptability. Zorax knew that if Ethan was as brilliant as he seemed, he would rise to the challenge. "I will be your opponent," Zorax said, his voice steady and calm. "You will face my fleet and tactics. It will test your mind and your resolve." Ethan's expression shifted, a mixture of excitement and determination crossing his face. Without another word, he accepted the challenge. The simulation began, and within moments, Zorax could see that Ethan was no ordinary player. The boy took command of his fleet with incredible precision. He read the battlefield, predicting the movement of Zorax's ships and adapting quickly. His tactics were unorthodox, often surprising Zorax with their audacity, yet they always seemed to work. It was like watching a seasoned commander, a grown adult, maneuver his forces with expert skill. Zorax felt a sense of admiration, mixed with an unease he couldn't shake. It was one thing to observe a child playing a game, but it was another to see that child outmaneuver a seasoned warrior like himself. There was no doubt now in Zorax's mind that humanity possessed potential far beyond what he had initially thought. The game was fast-paced and intense, but as the simulation went on, Zorax began to feel the weight of his own vulnerability. Each decision he made seemed to be countered by Ethan's brilliance. The boy was thinking 3 steps ahead, anticipating his every move. Zorax found himself in the rare position of being outplayed, his fleet taking hits he had not foreseen. The alien Admiral's respect for Ethan grew with each passing moment, but so did his concern. If this was a glimpse of what humanity could achieve, then they could be far more dangerous than the Jitharan Empire could ever anticipate. The boy was playing a game, but it was clear that, in his mind, it wasn't just a game anymore. It was a battlefield, a test of skill, wit, and strategy. And in this battlefield, humanity had the edge. As the simulation continued, Zorax could feel the game shifting. He had underestimated the boy, but now he was determined to learn from him. He needed to know more about Ethan's thought process, about how he could outthink and outmaneuver someone with far more experience. Zorax had always relied on his military training and instincts, but now he was seeing a different kind of warfare, one that could not be easily countered with brute strength or overwhelming firepower. The simulation finally ended, but not in Zorax's favor. Ethan's fleet emerged victorious, having outsmarted Zorax at every turn. The alien Admiral sat back, stunned. He had not expected to lose, not like this. Ethan turned to Zorax, a small, knowing smile on his face. "You were good," the boy said simply, as if the outcome of the battle didn't matter much to him. For Ethan, it had been a game, but Zorax knew better now. To Ethan, it had been much more. Zorax didn't respond immediately. His mind was racing, processing the implications of what had just occurred. He had seen the future of warfare in the eyes of this human child. The potential was there, hidden beneath the surface. Ethan had given him a glimpse of what humanity was capable of, and Zorax had learned a valuable lesson that day. The boy wasn't just playing a game. He was honing a skill that could one day change the course of galactic history, and Zorax wasn't sure if the galaxy was ready for that. As Zorax left the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he had known about the power dynamics of the universe was about to change. The game had only just begun, and humanity was playing to win. Zorax's mind remained occupied with Ethan's unexpected brilliance. The alien Admiral couldn't stop thinking about the simulation. It was no longer just about the game. The boy had demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Zorax had never considered humans a threat before, but after seeing Ethan's potential, he began to reconsider. The fleet he commanded was vast, but even a fleet of that size couldn't guarantee victory against a mind as sharp as Ethan's. There was something about humanity, about their adaptability and creativity, that made them unlike any other species Zorax had encountered. And now, Zorax knew the galaxy was in for a rude awakening. As he spent more time observing Ethan, Zorax noticed something else. Ethan wasn't alone in his brilliance. There were whispers among the crew, stories of humans who had accomplished impossible feats, of soldiers and tacticians who had turned the tide of war against enemies far stronger than themselves. Zorax had heard tales of Earth's military prowess, but it was different when you saw it firsthand. Humanity had a unique resilience, a drive that couldn't be extinguished by force. It was something more than just military tactics or technology. It was the human spirit. That spark of innovation and refusal to give up, no matter the odds. It was that spirit that Zorax had witnessed firsthand in Ethan, and it was that same spirit that had caught the attention of the Jithiran Empire. Ethan, though young, had an almost uncanny understanding of human potential. In many ways, he was a reflection of humanity as a whole, a species that, no matter how small or vulnerable they seemed, always found a way to survive and thrive. It was something Zorax couldn't understand completely, but he respected it. And now he had to prepare for the consequences. The Jithiran Empire had long dominated the galaxy. Their vast fleets, their superior technology, and their ruthless nature had made them the undisputed rulers of most sectors. But humanity's emergence was starting to stir things up. Zorax had already seen how quickly humans could adapt, how they could use their environment and resources to their advantage. They didn't need the most advanced technology or the largest army. They had ingenuity, teamwork, and a relentless will to win. Zorax knew that the Jithiran Empire couldn't afford to ignore humanity for much longer. They had underestimated Earth for too long. And now, Zorax feared, the humans were about to prove that their greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or technology. It was in their minds. And once humanity fully realized their potential, they would be unstoppable. The alien Admiral left the observation room, his mind racing with possibilities. What had started as a simple mission to observe Earth and its strange inhabitants had now become something far more complicated. Zorax's orders had been clear: evaluate the human threat. But what he had discovered went far beyond that. The threat wasn't just in their technology or their armies. It was in their ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and adapt. Zorax had seen how quickly humanity could shift from underdogs to victors. They didn't rely on brute strength or sheer numbers. Instead, they focused on the small details, the things that others overlooked. And in doing so, they had created a powerful force that was nearly impossible to defeat. As Zorax walked through the corridors of his flagship, he couldn't help but wonder what would happen if Earth's fleet fully embraced their potential. What if they stopped being a lesser species in the eyes of the galaxy and started to believe in their own strength? What if the galaxy as a whole underestimated humanity, only to discover too late that they were already one step ahead? Zorax couldn't shake the thought that the galaxy wasn't ready for humanity. The Jithiran Empire wasn't ready for humanity, and if they didn't act soon, they might find themselves facing a threat that they could never hope to defeat. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Ethan was far from thinking about the galactic implications of his actions. To him, it was still a game, an exciting challenge, something that tested his skills and imagination. But Ethan was no ordinary child. He had no idea yet how much of a role he would play in the coming war. His potential, his mind, was far ahead of his age, and the galaxy was about to witness the true power of humanity, whether they were ready or not. Zorex's final thoughts as he stood on the bridge of his ship were simple. The game is over. The real war is just beginning. Zorax couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The more he observed humanity, the more he realized how much they were capable of. Ethan was just the beginning, a symbol of something far greater. Humanity was not merely a species of survival. They were a species of evolution. What seemed like a small, insignificant species had the potential to challenge the very foundations of the galaxy. Days passed, and Zorax continued his watch. He had begun to track Earth's movements and learn more about their political and military structures. It became apparent that humanity was far more unified than the galaxy had ever realized. They had become a force of their own, and despite their seemingly primitive technology, their creativity and resourcefulness made them a dangerous adversary. What truly shook Zorax, however, was the realization that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons, their ships, or even their strategies. It was in their hearts, their unity, and their will to fight for what was right. Earth's resistance, their courage in the face of overwhelming odds, had become a living force that was now spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. He couldn't help but reflect on his earlier thoughts, the game Ethan had played. He had thought of it as a childish simulation, but now he saw it for what it was, a glimpse into the future. Ethan had unknowingly predicted the future of the galaxy. The child had outmaneuvered him on a digital battlefield, and now it seemed as if that very strategy was taking shape in the real world. Zorax watched as Earth's fleet grew in strength. The alliances they had formed, the weapons they had developed, and the technologies they had discovered were pushing them further into the realm of the impossible. It was no longer about defeating a technologically superior foe. It was about understanding their own potential and utilizing it in ways no one had thought possible. And then the unthinkable happened. A message from Earth's top fleet commander reached Zorax's flagship. It was a simple message, but its meaning was unmistakable. "We are coming." The tone was calm, almost casual, but Zorax felt a shiver run down his spine. The humans weren't just preparing for battle. They were making a statement. They weren't afraid, nor were they backing down. Zorax knew the galaxy wasn't ready for what was coming. His fleet wasn't ready. The Jitharan Empire was not prepared for the storm humanity was about to unleash. But it wasn't just the humans who had been changing. Zorax himself had begun to change. In observing Ethan, in understanding the drive that powered the human spirit, he had come to see that the Jitharan Empire and all the other species that once looked down upon Earth had underestimated them. Worse, they had underestimated their potential. Zorax made a decision. He would no longer simply observe humanity. It was time to act. He would be part of the battle, not as a conqueror, but as a student. He needed to learn more. He needed to understand how to fight alongside humanity rather than against it. His role would be one of guidance, of support, because he knew now that if the Jitharan Empire remained locked in their old ways, they would be obliterated. The galaxy was shifting, and humanity was at the center of it. Meanwhile, Earth's fleet continued to prepare. The final pieces were falling into place. Ethan, now older, stood at the helm of a new mission. He had no idea just how much he had changed the course of history with a simple game. But his understanding of strategy and the depth of his insights had rippled outward, influencing not only his peers, but the very fate of the galaxy itself. Humanity's story was just beginning. No longer would they be seen as insignificant. No longer would they be overlooked. They were ready to rise, and the universe would learn the true meaning of the human spirit. Zorax had seen it firsthand, and now it was time for the galaxy to see it too. As the final preparations were made, Zorax took one last look at Earth's fleet. There, in the heart of it, was humanity's ultimate weapon, their unity, their courage, and their unwavering belief in themselves. And for the first time, Zorax realized something important. Humanity didn't just fight to survive. They fought because they knew they could win. The galaxy was about to witness the rise of humanity, and it was going to be impossible to ignore.